Judges Corner is brought to you by CoolStuffInc.com and gatheringmagic.com. Support our show by visiting both websites. Now it's time for Judges Corner with David Green.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Judges Corner. Today we're going over our second part of combat, where we go over some of the more specific stuff that happens during the combat steps and phases. So let's go ahead and jump right in. Let's go back over some of those steps from last time. First, there's the beginning of combat, which we all know is just a layover for triggered abilities to happen when we start combat, and the last chance to prevent or make more attackers. But there's also a tournament shortcut that leads us through here too. Tournament shortcuts are pre-established things most of us do every game, and are there pretty much to protect us against shenanigans. The first tournament shortcut we encounter in combat is that if the attacking player makes a statement like, "I want to attack," or "combat," or anything suggesting that they want to start the combat phase, then it's assumed that they're passing priority until the opponent has it in the beginning of combat. This gives the defending player a chance to kill stuff before it can officially attack, but also locks us into combat so that the attacking player can't be like, "Whoa, I never said I was entering the declare attacker step. You played that in my main phase. Now I get a chance to play my giant Solifuge and attack with it." That's not the case, unless you have an Aether Vial and 4 counters. So, unless you specifically say that you're entering the beginning of combat step, you're assumed to already be in that step when you ask if you can attack. The next step is the declare attacker step. Before anyone can respond, attacks are declared. Then, the same happens but with blockers in the declare blocker step. The damage step follows, and as detailed before, we go through a couple turn-based actions. Finally, we have the end of combat, which is the final step of the combat phase. It's important to note that after the turn-based actions at the beginning of a step, that both players will get a chance to take actions and respond to each other before either player can advance. So, for example, if you, as the attacking player, decide to attack out with a lot of your creatures, and your opponent then decides as the defending player to play Cryptic Command to tap them all out in the beginning of combat step, so you, as the attacking player, will then have one more opportunity once Cryptic Command resolves to, say, animate your Raging Ravine. And then your opponent will also get an opportunity to respond by possibly tapping it out again with another Cryptic Command, or just letting you continue on to the declare attacker step. So now the first advanced topic I want to talk about is restrictions and requirements. We all remember that when attacking, you have to meet as many requirements without breaking a single restriction. Let's give an example to help illustrate that. Say you control a crawl space, an artifact that says no more than 2 creatures can attack you each combat, which is a restriction that cannot be broken. And you also control a War's Toll, an enchantment that says if a creature an opponent controls attacks, all creatures that opponent controls must attack if able, which is a requirement that must be maximized. This means when being attacked, you can only be attacked by 0 creatures, because then your opponent will have maximized the requirements, which is that if they attack, they must attack with all of their creatures, without breaking a single restriction. Or 2 creatures, which will maximize the requirements of creatures that have to attack, without breaking the predetermined restrictions. This also means you couldn't be attacked by 1 creature, because that does not maximize the requirements set by War's Toll. And you cannot be attacked with 3 or more creatures, because you would then be breaking the restriction set by crawl space. Remember from Combat Part 1 that you don't have to attack if there is a cost associated with attacking, like with Norn's Annex, despite any requirements. So you're never required to pay a cost for another mandated action. The second tournament shortcut for combat includes when players say something like, "No attacks." Then it's assumed that you're passing priority until you don't have priority in the end of combat, which means there won't likely be a blocker step or a damage step, but there will still be an end of combat step. The last combat related shortcut is when a player says something like, "I attack," they're always attacking the player, unless they specify otherwise. So in other words, you're never attacking a planeswalker unless you specify what is specifically attacking that planeswalker. Now, let's cover a few other odds and ends of combat. One such ruling prevents non-creature permanents put into play attacking from attacking. So for example, if your Teller Nephilim put a god into play tapped and attacking, but its devotion was too low for it to be a creature as it came into play, it would never be considered attacking, but it still would enter play tapped as if it did attack. Another rule very similar to that states that if a defending player were to take one of my attacking creatures, it wouldn't still be attacking. So for example, if the defending player played Gather Specimens in response to my Nephilim's trigger, the gathered specimen would not be attacking, even if it was a creature under your control, because you aren't the player that's attacking, but it will still enter play tapped. Basically, if something was put into play attacking or blocking, but then whatever it was attacking or blocking isn't there or leaves, be it the player in a multiplayer game or a planeswalker, the attacking or blocking thing is still put into play, but just not blocking or attacking what it was originally in play to attack. However, it'll still be considered an attacking or blocking creature. This is important for spells like Celestial Flare. If attacking or blocking creatures are removed from play, switch control, phase out, or just stop being creatures, they are removed from combat. A good recent example is a God's Devotion dropping too low, if even for a second, in the middle of combat. Something that regenerates is also removed from combat, but only when it regenerates, not when you use the ability to set up a regeneration shield. So if you paid 1 black into Lotleth Troll to regenerate it, it would not actually be removed from combat until it actually would go and die, in which case it doesn't. The last things I want to mention are that if you tap a creature that attacked with Vigilance after it attacked, it's still attacking, like a Stone Hero Giant. So make sure you tap that creature with Vigilance before the Declare Attacker step. Also, there's a distinct difference between fighting and typical combat damage in the damage step. Things that interact with damage, like Death Touch or Lifelink, will still go into effect via a fight, but things that modify combat will have no effect in a fight, like Trample, First Strike, or Double Strike. Well, this concludes our second part of our combat episode for Judge's Corner. If you haven't watched our first part already, what are you doing? You should watch that one first. If you haven't already, go ahead and click the annotation that's hovering somewhere near my face. And if you have any questions about this episode, past episodes, or just random magic rules questions in general, go ahead and send me an email at judgescorner@gatheringmagic.com, and I'll be happy to get back to you on that. Until next time, make sure to shuffle thoroughly, play at a reasonable pace, and finish him!